Hello everyone and welcome to our latest episode of Aircover. Aircover is an international, inspiring and informative webinar series by Global University Systems that brings to you some of the most interesting businesses and business leaders from across the globe. Our topic today is influencer marketing and female entrepreneurship. Now, if you're a student with the hopes of establishing a long and successful career in marketing and influencer marketing more specifically, then you don't want to miss this conversation. Our guest today has worked with numerous household names, published 2 books, hosted a podcast series, is a judge for industry awards, and is a regular guest expert for the BBC News, Sky News, the Financial Times, and The Drum. We're joined by Sedge Beswick, who is the founder and CEO of Scene Connects. Scene Connects is an innovative influencer marketing agency which was founded in 2016. Scene Connects has an annual turnover of over £20 million and has now established offices in New York and in London. Sedge, a very warm welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our staff and students.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Sedge, just before we start, Gus places a lot of importance on his company values, and I would like to tease out one of those values and hear what your thoughts are on collaboration. What does collaboration mean to Scene Connects?
Yeah, there's a lot of synergy between your values and our values. But yeah, the one we were kind of chatting about before was collaboration. And I think for me, when I think about collaboration, I think about the two-way connection that you build with other people. We're humans, right?
Yeah.
And people buy from people and people support one another. And that is one of the fundamentals that connects the business has been built off. Whether you are a business that is working with us, whether you are an employee in the business, that two-way collaboration, that kind of ethos of maintaining your network, building your network. And then in the interest of this podcast, when you're then thinking about potentially starting your own business or having a side hustle or going straight out, I am an entrepreneur, then you definitely need the power in that network. So for me, you know, I definitely don't get on with everyone. Everyone definitely doesn't get on with me. I can say at this age I am Marmite. But I think when you do strike that rapport with someone, it's really important that you're there for them, that you support them. And it could be personal, it could be work-related, professional, but everything comes back round. And you never forget the people and how they made you feel and how, you know, the impact that they had on your life. Again, whether that is personal or whether that's business, the two kind of work hand in hand. So yeah, that was the kind of one that really struck a chord with me.
It's a beautiful one. It's a beautiful value as well, collaboration.
Yeah, yeah.
So to our viewers, if you have questions, or I'm sure you have questions for Sedge, do send them in the live chat box, and we'll come back to you during the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Sedge, let's dive straight in. To kick things off, can you give us an introduction into what is it that you do as the founder and CEO of Scene Connects, which is an innovative influencer marketing agency?
Yeah, so I'm actually like week 3 back from maternity leave. So at the moment, what I do is very different to what I was doing before because I'm trying to get my head back in the game and trying to remember, you know, what I do outside of changing a nappy. But ultimately, the business, we help brands to work with celebrities and influencers the right way. So that would be coming up with the creative, that would be then managing that experience from end to end, the negotiations, the working with the who, and then the most important bit is obviously measuring the return on investment and whatever success looks like for each of our different brands that we work with. And my job is ultimately to, well, again, it's quite interesting. Pre-maternity leave, my job was a little bit of everything. Yeah. And I absolutely spread myself far too thinly because I was used to kind of being founder and the person who's been in the business forever and a day, and ultimately the person who will always care the most. And now I have to be far more selfish with my time. And I can't work evenings, I can't work weekends. You know, I have to manage my life around Mari, my daughter. Like, she is my core priority. She's now baby number 1 and the business is baby number 2. So I'm now really laser focused on what I'm good at. And I was reading this article earlier about like founder superpowers. Yeah. And my superpower is absolutely selling influence marketing. I know this industry inside out. I'm hugely passionate. I really believe in it. And so me going out, speaking to brands, understanding their challenges is kind of how I will spend the bulk of my day, with the exception to being here.
Yeah. Be happy to have you here.
Good. It'd be awkward if you said you didn't want me here, wouldn't it?
I read an interesting article from you in the CEO BizWorld where you talk about visualization and manifestation. And I'm a huge fan of visualization and manifestation. How can students apply visualization and manifestation techniques to achieve their goals?
Yeah, so I always think when you talk about manifestation, it sounds quite cheesy, and you sound quite free-spirited, but actually it's almost just having that like 90-day plan. When you start in a job, when you're starting even your university career, it's kind of wanting to know what you're going to get out of it. And it's ultimately the exact same thing. It is, you don't just kind of turn up and go, let's see what happens and hope for the best. You kind of have to plan out and map out what success looks like for you, what it is that you want to achieve. And yes, you can kind of do like, let's manifest some good weather today. But it helps to change the mindset and the framework, especially like we're living in a perma-crisis, right? Everything is doom and gloom. You read the news and you're just like, okay, something else to worry about. Yeah. So actually having the opportunity to kind of control your own narrative and to have a bit of positivity, even if it is just willful optimism, I find it really helps. Yeah. And again, from a business perspective, talking about what I was just talking about before, it's like, I want to manifest the fact that I'll be the best possible mother and also then a really, really good founder and leader of an agency. Yeah. Like that is in my control. Yeah. And that is what I can't control cost of living. Yeah. I can't control wars in Ukraine, but I can really make sure that if you're working at Connect, you're going to enjoy your day, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that happens. And that's why I kind of always come back to visualizing it. And weirdly, when I was having that interview, I used to trampoline many, many, many years ago because, I think I would wet myself if I jumped on a trampoline right now. Sorry, pregnancy overshare there. But I'd compete. I used to compete very competitively. I would arrive at the gymnasium, for want of a better expression. The sports hall is probably more accurate. And I would be in the corner and I would visualize my routine and I would make sure that it was cemented in because I wanted to walk home with gold. Yeah. So it's the same ethos, it's the same skills. It's kind of putting that into practice, whether you are competing, whether you're running a marathon, whether you're running a business, or whether you're trying to make sure that your baby goes to bed so that you can actually get a decent night's sleep. So
it's essentially having a plan of what it is that you want to have, and then also visualizing you achieving that plan. Essentially, these are the kind of the two takeaways for students.
Exactly.
Cool. Now, having experienced working with different brands like Nike, eBay, Panasonic, Red Bull, and ASOS, can you tell us about taking that step to break onto your own and how that experience has helped the growth of Scene Connects?
Yeah, it actually comes back to your first question. So I wish I had some wonderful story about setting up the agency. I don't have one. It was right place, right time, met the right person. It was literally an 18-minute conversation. And I backed myself obviously enough to kind of do it and to take a plunge. But the thing that kind of kept me up at night ahead of setting up the business is if you're running an agency and my entire background was in-house, I'd never even worked with an agency, and then all of a sudden I was running one. But for me, the thing that kept me up at night and the thing that worried me was like, where do these clients come from? How do you start to build off your client base? And tapping back into the network, I did have really good relationships at ASOS and I had really good relationships at Red Bull. I still speak to the people I work with at Red Bull, which is now, 14 years ago. I'm very old. And so, it is when I founded the business and obviously went to LinkedIn and I was like, woo, I've got this agency. Let's work out what it is that I'm doing. I had 3 people message me that day on day one going, actually, I've got a brief. And 2 of them weren't competitive. 1 of them was, because I had kind of made my mark, as cheesy as that sounds, in terms of what I'm good at and what I know. And people were like, oh yeah, I know Sedge can do that. So let's give it a shot. And again, that trust is already there. The chemistry was already there. So it's easier for me to kind of step into a room and say, cool, this is your brand and this is what we're going to deliver and what we're going to do for you. But without that network, and especially ASOS in particular, it would have been really difficult and really, really hard to kind of get the business off the ground. Once it's going, you can use your case studies, you can use kind of all of that experience to then start going into stage 2 and 3 of that visualization and that plan. Yeah. But you need something to start and to get going.
Yeah. Where did you get that courage? Like, did you always know in your gut feeling that it's going to work out, or was it something where you thought, I'll go for it?
Oh God, no, I just went for it and hoped for the best. I actually, if I was to be truly honest, when I set up the business, I thought I'll do this for 3 months. Yeah. And I will find someone that can then come in and run this business, because that's not me. Yeah. And actually the weirdest thing is the kind of selling and the talking and the confidence to go out and be like, no, I really know my stuff when it comes to this field, is the bit I thought I would be bad at. Yeah. But when you've got to do it, you just get on and you do it. And I think that's very much kind of the ethos of running the business is there are people that depend on receiving their salary based on how the business performs. And ultimately, my name's above the door.
Yeah.
So there's nothing quite like kind of having a rocket up your arse to kind of make you achieve in that sense too. But I never set out as, you know, you read and listen to Stephen Bartlett or and all these different entrepreneurs who really talk about, you know, from age 6, I knew this was my destiny and this is what I was going to do. Like, I'm very much about, in life, it is all about who you know, not what you know.
Yeah.
And if an opportunity comes and it feels right, you take it, you give it a go. If it doesn't work out, you learn more than if it did work out.
Having worked with numerous household names like musician Louis Capaldi, TV presenter Laura Whitmore, and comedian Jack Whitehall, can you sum up how important social media management and digital marketing is in business today, and give us an insight into your top tips when it comes to social media?
Yeah, so I think irrespective of what field you want to go into or what your business, if you want to found a business, is going to do, you need to be on social in some capacity. Appreciate I am well and truly biased. But for me, like if you're applying for a job now, you will look at your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And a LinkedIn profile gives more flavor and more insight into a person than a CV. Yeah. And actually, I often now will look at the name, and then I'll type it into LinkedIn, and I will look at the articles of what they've posted. I'll look at what they're engaging with, what they're commenting, because I care far more about, again, the human than I do about this really awkward CV that someone's really helped you to write back and forth. You've probably used a bit of AI to help you these days. And so it's kind of taking out that roboticness of what has previously been quite formulaic from a resume and a CV. I'm sorry, I do a lot in America, and applying for jobs. And again, as I said, like, I want to work with people. I want to work with real people, and I want it to be fun, and I want it to be enjoyable. So, and especially with what I do, it's important to kind of build and maintain those social profiles. But as you mentioned, the celebrities, some of those people were quite interesting because in the pandemic, we were helping them to kind of pivot. Festivals weren't happening, so you can't get your revenue stream there.
Yes.
People weren't presenting as much because you couldn't go into studios, so people couldn't get their revenue there. So what do those household names look like from a digital perspective? And how do they kind of continue their revenue streams by being content creators and entertainers within the social space? And that was a really good and interesting challenge as we were going through the pandemic.
I can imagine. You published 2 books.
Books is a strong word.
One of them is called Make Instagram Your Business, and the other one is called 140 Ultimate Twitter Lols. Which platform is most important to students today?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yes. LinkedIn. I can't, again, as a student, you want to be building your presence on LinkedIn. You want to make sure that you're being noticed. You want to be doing something that sets you aside when you're, you know, applying for your first job. Equally, it's LinkedIn, so you associate it to work. So you're not posting your weekend antics or whatever your very niche subculture hobby might be. You know, no employer should be looking at your LinkedIn, your Be Real, your OnlyFans, but they should be looking at your LinkedIn and making sure that the version that they might be hiring or investing in is, you know, up to date and relevant.
So as students, I've already heard, spend more time on your LinkedIn rather than your Twitter or your Instagram.
Definitely.
For your career.
For
your career. And also do keep sending questions for Sophie in the chat box. You can keep sending them now. Don't wait till the end. In 2019, you launched a podcast series called Connectcast, which was hailed as the new wave of influential sound. The podcast has now been discontinued. Could you talk us through what it is like closing a business?
Yeah, so one of the things that is really important, again, when you're running a marketing agency, is that the services you offer are relevant and timely to the client need. So 2018, 2019, we saw a huge increase in podcast sponsorship, podcast production, and it was probably 60% of what the business was doing. It still tied into influencers or celebrities, whether it was sponsoring their podcast, whether it was getting guests onto different platform podcasts. And then the pandemic hit, and people didn't want this shiny, polished, premium produced podcast. They wanted things that were really raw, and they understood that actually you were listening to a podcast while you were commuting to work, and now you're listening to it whilst you're cleaning the dishes. So your mindset and where you're consuming that content significantly changed. And we still produce podcasts, we still do sponsorship, but it didn't need to be a standalone hero business. Yeah. It could be part of the offering, but it's now probably 2% of the revenue from the business, because I've forgotten what that company is now, but you can do it on something like Speedy Duck or Steady Duck. It's probably not called that at all. But there are a lot of third parties out there where you can stream really high quality produced podcasts that don't need to be in a studio, that don't need all the bells and whistles. And again, if you're running your own business, I think one of the most important things to do is to constantly change your revenue streams and to use the insight and the GP that you're making to kind of, again, continue to evolve and to stay ahead of the competition. And I always say, especially in social media, what you knew yesterday is irrelevant tomorrow. The platforms change. I was reading something yesterday that was like, BeReal's done, no one cares about BeReal. I never got a brand on BeReal, but I've got brands on Periscope and Vine that no longer exist. So again, it's having the ability to go, cool, we tried it and it didn't work out, or we tried it and actually it's not as important as we thought. So I need to pivot and constantly evolve and make sure that we're staying ahead of our competition.
There'll be many students following this webinar today inspired by the story, by your story of entrepreneurship and hoping to replicate the success that you have had. What advice would you give to students wanting to go down a similar career path as yours?
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting question, and one that my genuine view is probably not one that I can say without upsetting people, but I think the big thing for me is there's a real disconnect in my experience, my personal view, in my experience. I have a lot of 20, 21-year-olds who'll come to me on LinkedIn and they'll say, I want to found a business, or would you like to invest in this idea I have? But everything feels very much like the whole idea will be I start at 10 a.m. and I work at 4 p.m. because balance is really important. If you are genuinely going to found a business and scale a business, it's only now that I have the luxury, like 7 years in, to be like, cool, my daughter is my priority. I was working 24/7. I have never worked as hard as I worked when I was pregnant, to the point where that was all me and my husband were arguing about, where he's like, you're literally growing a human being and you are never here, you are running around, and it's hard. And I think often there's a real problem with founders glorifying success. And this is so great, and look at me on a yacht in Monaco. I definitely have not been successful enough to be on a yacht in Monaco. But I think that kind of real, it's very easy to forget the war wounds and the pain and the hours and the physical exhaustion that go into it. And I do think I would say to anyone, if you're going to found a business, it's 24/7 graft. And you can do it, just prepare yourself. And if you want to clock off at 4 p.m. and you've got clients who want to call you at 10 p.m., you're going to have to answer that phone.
It's good for students to know. So it's not all just glamorous.
It's probably the same as writing a dissertation. I was still doing that like 4 a.m. the night before, going, oh, there's a deadline.
Finish it now.
Don't do that. Bad idea.
No. You've set up a mentorship program to support young people entering social marketing. Could you tell us a bit more about this, and what criteria do students or anybody who wants to join the mentorship program have to meet to qualify as a candidate for this program?
Yeah, it's more, at the moment, I've been on maternity leave and I'm just coming back. So I basically take people at completely different stages of their life, of their career. And often what I find is people go, I just want to get promoted, or I want to earn another 5K in my salary. I don't help there. That's not where I come in. But what my challenge is always, where do you actually want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? When you're thinking about the next part, you're literally like 2% into your career. People are retiring 65, 70, it's getting older and older. So actually, where do you want to land, and what does success look like for you as an individual? And that's where I can come in to help people, support people, and I can do the challenges around difficult bosses or awkward conversations. It's always easier when it's someone else rather than when it is yourself. At the moment, I'm not doing any of it because there aren't enough hours in the day. Regardless of what Molly May says. Hopefully that reference lands. But I will always give the time to anyone who asks me on LinkedIn. So irrespective of, it could be a 5-minute chat, it could be a response to an email, it could be a voice note. I think it's hugely important. And again, we very coincidentally keep coming back to the first question you asked, and one of your values, that collaboration piece is hugely important. I think people would always be surprised about if you message someone on a platform or on LinkedIn and you just say, you know, I'm a student and I'm about to kind of kickstart my career, I'd really love 5 minutes of your time. Most people will say yes, because you remember being 20, 21, terrified of the world that you have in front of you. When I started, I was doing social media. Try going out when you're, 15 years ago and telling people you sat on Facebook all day. I got abused because it wasn't a job and it wasn't what people were doing. And now when people come to me and say, I want to work in social media, I'm like, do not go into social media. The worst idea possible, because what's next? Like, what are you doing in AI? What are you doing in voice, production, video? These are the kind of growth areas. And it's not just doing what kind of looks fun. It's really kind of taking the time to do the grilling and the research. And I think that's where using other people and starting to build that network and that rapport is really important. And, I've had students, I lecture quite a lot, who, 10 years ago were thinking about what their first job should be, who are now clients. Because I took the time and I gave them that 10 minutes. And I do think it's really important. Did I answer that question, or did I just waffle?
Absolutely. No, that was great. That was really good. It literally, yes, absolutely. Now, we've already mentioned a couple of times, you've returned from maternity leave recently. Congratulations again.
Thanks. Had a baby, I'm that person.
So as a role model to young women, how do we keep inspiring women to follow their dreams in the business world? I mean, it can't be, you said it's only been 3 weeks since you've been back at work. How do you manage all of this? How do you juggle everything?
I don't. Really do not have my shit together, is the most honest way that I could put it. I'm really trying, but I think the really interesting thing, and again, this won't be relevant for most people, but is having a child can throw you curveballs like you've never seen. She's totally fine, but I ended up in A&E last Tuesday. So then I end up there for 8 hours. That's a whole working day. Yes. So all of a sudden, that was my second day back. And then the next day I am on my knees, exhausted. So I'm trying to do conversations with clients like, Googling, trying to remember like anything about my industry. So I think it's cheesy, but again, be kind to yourself. Like, I have to understand that I can't do and I can't deliver as much as I used to do before. So, and again, I've always said this, hire people that are better than you. And it's a luxury that I have now that the business is the size it is, where I'm not patient, so I need people that are patient in their team. I'm also not, a mathlete. So the data and the insights team, I've got those experts that are being built. And that then gives you the autonomy and the flexibility to then kind of do, again, what you're good at and to kind of hone in and make that focus. But yeah, life is hard. Life is really difficult right now. And those curveballs will come. It's embracing them and knowing that anything can kind of be thrown your way and you just got to do the best you can.
Thank you for that candid answer. It's brilliant. I mean, I think a lot of times people just glamorize things and you don't really hear how things really are. So this is really helpful.
I mean, I was covered in vomit about an hour before I came here, so I could have been really honest.
You don't see that now.
I did find a little bit of food from Baby Biscuit, so that's it, yeah.
That's cute. And to finish off, do you offer internship, work experience, or job opportunities at Scene Connects?
Yes, we do. I currently am not part of it because
Yeah.
it went through quite a big uphaul when I was on maternity leave. But she's called Lisa Bent. If you were to drop Lisa Bent from Scene Connects Align on LinkedIn, one of my keywords for this podcast, she can kind of tell you what we do to apply and the kind of parameters that are in place and what we do.
Thank you, Sedge. Let's take a look at some of the questions we've received in our live chat box. Our first one is, how do you maintain a healthy, balanced lifestyle, all while doing the intense work to build a successful business?
Yesterday I ordered a McDonald's for lunch, so healthy is definitely not the word. This is probably 3 years ago, I wrote a post on LinkedIn about why people need to stop telling women that they're going to burn out.
Yeah.
And I never saw it happen to my male counterparts, but I kept being told, and I've been in these situations where people are like, oh, if you keep working this hard, Sedge, or if you keep putting this many hours in, Sedge, you'll burn out. And it really peed me off.
Yeah.
However, now I have come back after maternity leave. It's the first time in my entire career that I worked in my maternity leave, right? Like I didn't fully down tools until February, which was my last month. Yeah. And I was like, I can't speak to a single person from work. I'm slightly traumatized that I'm back to work because I have this unbelievable human who every single day evolves and changes. and I have to pay for the luxury for someone else to watch that. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And that's my fault, because I said I'd come back after 4 months. I told all the investors I'd come back after 4 months. I managed about 5. But that February was quite an eye-opener for me, where I feel like I've spent my entire career on this hamster wheel, and I've just been going and going and going, and it gave me the opportunity to stop. And that's why I've come back different. I've come back and I've gone, cool, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I'm going to do, because it drives the most value to the business. It is the best way that I can be present at home and in the office without being exhausted, without even realizing that I am burnt out and knackered and fed up. I'm probably a little bit angry. I'm not angry at anything. I'm angry at myself, because I had that McDonald's and I can't fit in my jeans anyway. And I had a McDonald's which makes me feel groggy and it makes me feel tired. But when you're that busy, they're the things you just forget about. Exactly, and so the answer to the question genuinely is, like, I don't have that healthy balance in any way, shape or form, but I'm working on it. And for me, the only way that I can have a positive attitude to work is if I nail how to be there for my daughter first and foremost. And everything else is secondary.
Setting priorities.
Exactly.
A second question is, it's common for people to say they skipped out on drinks with friends to work hard and achieve their goals. How much do you agree with this mindset?
So I actually think it's a good question, because I, pre-baby, loved a drink. And I love seeing my friends. I'm a very, very sociable, I'm obviously an extrovert, right? So if it was clients, if it was friends, I would go out, I would do those bits and pieces. Again, it's your network, right? It's the people who are going to be there to support you. It's the people that might become clients. It's the people that might refer you. Then I moved further out of London, so it takes me an hour to get anywhere. And then it's hard. And then you throw a baby in the mix, and it's really hard, because she wakes up incredibly early and multiple times in the evening. So yeah, you do have to kind of compromise some of those friendships, some of those times out, but you still have to make time for those people if they're really important to you. And I think anyway, when you become, oh God, this is going to sound really patronizing, but as you get older and you become more of an adult, which clearly I'm not a good one because I had McDonald's yesterday for lunch, you do start to phase out certain friends, not on purpose, but they might be negative, or they might, not agree with your political views, and that is high on the agenda right now. Or they might be the people that don't make effort for you, and subsequently you feel like you're constantly the person that's like, do you want to do something? Do you want to do something? So naturally, I think anyway, you get a more tight, close-knit group of friends when you're older. A lot of people just don't want to hang out with people who've got babies either. Like, I'm the most boring person now. Like, people don't want to see my nipples when I'm out and I'm breastfeeding, so then I don't get invited. So it happens, but I think it happens quite organically. And if those people are hugely important to you, to your life, to your happiness, that's on you to keep in touch with them and to find time. And you could be Mark Zuckerberg and, unbelievably wealthy, unbelievably important and busy. If he's not making time for his friends or his family and cancelling all of those drinks and dinners, he's got a very lonely existence. Again, I'm not saying that's what Zuckerberg does, but I'm using him as a known reference. And the life stages you go through, it does get harder, but I think, you've got to make effort for the people that really matter and that you really care about.
Have you ever struggled with self-doubt? If so, how do you overcome these sorts of feelings?
Yes, everyone has. I'm 34 now. I say that because I recently was on something and I said I was 35, and my mom texted me to be like, you're not. So I'm 34 now. I set up the business when I was literally like, I was 27 that week, and I was really cocky and I was really confident because I was so passionate about influencer marketing, and I had worked in it in various different disciplines for longer than most people. It was always called something different. And actually, as the business gets bigger, it gets way more complicated. And again, boring, harping on about the same things. I have less time. And those challenges do become significantly bigger. The doubt I had going back to work on my first day, and my husband's like, Sedge, this is insane. This is your business. You founded it. You recruited. I didn't recruit all the people. Obviously, new people started when I was away. But he was like, but you put the values into that business. So if everyone that's kind of leading the business has replicated those values, those people should be like connects through and through. But it felt like my first day back at school. I felt physically sick. And I hated my first day back at work. I think I cried about 7 times, and I feel like I can't cry at my job. So I'm there like hiding in corners, and I was hiding anyway because I was trying to pump in the middle of the day, and the doubt was catastrophic. But the next day, it's a new day, and you've got to kind of tackle your own demons and get on with things and hope for the best. And sometimes you'll do things, like you asked me before, are you nervous about these things? I'm like, nah, if I can't talk about my job, like what can I can't do anything. But the first time I ever lectured at university, it was probably history's worst lecture. It was shambolic, and the lecturer afterwards came back to me and said, you'll come back next week and you'll do that again. And if she hadn't have done that, I'd have never lectured. But I acknowledged that it was terrible. I had a week to kind of reflect on how bad it was and to make sure that I smashed it out of the park the next time.
Wow.
And I take so much enjoyment from going out and lecturing and talking about getting investment, founding businesses, influence marketing, social marketing, that, yeah, you have to kind of make those mistakes and go through those doubts to then come out the other side.
Absolutely. What is the one thing you've got that got you through the 24/7 hustle stage of your career?
Diet Coke.
Diet Coke. Diet Coke it is.
Honestly, it's really bad.
Some product placement here.
Hi. I am definitely addicted to Diet Coke. That is my source of caffeine. But this isn't my entire career, but I got a coach in 2020 when the pandemic hit because I'm a people person. I like being around people. That was cut off. My family lived 3.5 hours away. They were cut off. And as much as I love my husband, I was just with him 24/7. And there's only so much talking about work and businesses and challenges and words like furlough that I'd never heard in my life before. And I decided that was the time for me to invest in a coach. And I still use Adam, my coach now. And it's a really selfish hour where I basically get a bit of work therapy. And we don't always agree on the same things. But he always helps me get to the outcome, or he helps reflect on things in myself that I hadn't realized. Like, as an example, he was like, you're the most enthusiastic person I've ever coached. Like, your passion, you're so excited, everything's amazing. And he was like, but as soon as there's something that's tricky, you go into this like quite negative psyche around how to tackle it. Have you ever tried to tackle it with enthusiasm? And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. But when you're founding a business, and again, I don't mean to sound like an egotistic maniac, because I'm absolutely not, but you don't have anyone to go to talk to, or to say, was this right? Or how would you do this differently? But when you're being managed by someone, you get that feedback constantly to help you evolve as a manager, as a head of, whatever your level is. So that's kind of my selfish hour once a month, that is really dedicated to me, and like just gives me he can't judge me, right? I mean, he definitely judges me, but I can talk very openly.
It's also part of self-care, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's part of
exactly.
self-care,
Exactly.
There's a YouTube question. I don't know why it was from YouTube question. How can society and politics do a better job at inspiring women to become entrepreneurs?
Where did YouTube come into that?
I don't know. It's just sent through as a YouTube question.
Oh.
Maybe, yeah.
Sorry, give me the question again. I got distracted by YouTube.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, me too. I was just surprised to see that. How can society and politics do a better job at inspiring women to become entrepreneurs?
I think, again, we've kind of touched on it slightly, but it's the honesty. And I think that's probably not just women. That's probably more broad. And pre-having a child, I'd have told you, having a child, whatever, like, you just go back to work and there's nurseries and that's fine. It is so expensive having a child. And then you've got the emotional plug of wanting to spend time with your child and not even wanting to drop them off at nursery. And so that female glass ceiling exists. And as much as I wanted to avoid it and pretend it doesn't happen, it happens. And it is brutal. And so I think that honesty piece around what to expect needs to be there. But also, I actually can't remember the figure because I didn't know I was going to get this question. It was on the article you talked about, the CEO business. It's something insane, like 6% of investment in the UK goes towards female entrepreneurs. And I was going through a new round of investment when I was pregnant that didn't complete because I was about 4 days before my due date. And I was like, I'm out. And guess what? I was in a room full of men for literally 18 months who... Then one being female is one thing, being pregnant and female is a whole different kettle of fish. It is really, really hard. And yeah, honesty, more female investment support to get females as investments so that they can understand the things that women go through. Absolutely. And making sure there are more women on the board who have a seat at the table, and helping them to build profile so that they can be in a position where they might be able to get investment, because it's nowhere near where it should be.
I can imagine. I mean, have you seen things progress in the last year since you've been in your career? Have you seen things progressing? Is it still a slow process? It's still not.
I didn't realize how slow and how horrific it was until I was a female pregnant in the process. Yeah. And that's not necessarily the people that was buying us, that looking to buy us. It was everyone. Yeah. Everyone. You'd get on a call with a lawyer, they'd be like, "Oh, you're pregnant." I got asked whether it was a mistake. I was like, I got married 6 months ago. How do you not have a brain cell that goes, actually, Sedge might want a family? Yeah. And I get it, like timing is everything. But my priority, as I said, was always my family, is always my family, is my child. And I'm literally on a call with 8 men going, "Oh, was this an accident?" No, it's not.
Clearly have to change.
There's exactly. And it'll take a long time. Yeah. It'll take a really long time. And again, I have a minuscule, tiny, very tiny role to play in that too, because I've been on the front row and I've experienced it all firsthand, and I can't just shy away because I might upset someone. No, definitely not. And it's people like you who also drive the change, so definitely. Bit of pressure for me there too.
Sedge, we're slowly coming to an end to this webinar. It's been amazing and inspiring to have you here today. Your candid chat, very refreshing. Thank you so much for taking
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been really lovely. And to our viewers, thank you for taking the time to join us today to this webinar. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar. And our next air cover is on the 24th of May at 3 p.m. BST with Misbah Malik, who's a lawyer, HR consultant, coach and stylist at Orenda Career and Lifestyle Coaching Limited. She's also the Senior Talent Acquisition Manager at one of the world's largest beauty companies, Coty. So for more information, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next month. Thank you and goodbye.